As a new year draws near, many folks may be starting to think about New Year's resolutions or maybe some changes they'd like to kick off in 2025. And one big change that some people may be considering is quitting smoking. But as current and former smokers now, nicotine is one of the hardest chemicals to quit. Today, we are joined by Charmaine Patel from Northern Light Acadia Hospital to discuss how to quit and how to stick with it. Dr. Patel, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with the health benefits. So how quickly can you see the health benefits after quitting?
So thank you for having me, Megan. And so within weeks, your lung function and circulation can improve. Your risk of dying from smoking-related diseases such as stroke and cancers go down. And within a year, the risk of the person who has quit smoking, their risk of coronary heart disease is now half that of smokers.
So you can really see benefits relatively quickly. So what are the top barriers that people experience when they're trying to quit?
So smoking is a habit that is very much ingrained in the fabric of someone's life. So often they will have family and friends that smoke that make some social pressure in regards to smoking. There are other barriers that people face, such as they can be concerned about the mood swings, the cravings, and the general stress of trying to quit. Some people are concerned about weight gain, and often I think the biggest barriers are the psychological barriers, that people don't think that they can quit or that they can stay stopped. But it's really important to believe that you can do it.
And there's help available out there if you do want to stop and stay stopped, as you mentioned. How can those resources be incorporated into an overall strategy to quit?
So yeah, there are many resources available on mainquitlink.com, and these are free resources. There are support groups available. It always helps to tell somebody that you trust and you're close to that you're planning to quit, as they can help support you through the process and can also keep you accountable. And then finally, another way to stay accountable is to tell your primary care doctor. And this can also open up the option of medications that can help somebody to quit.
This is a really important question because I think a lot of people who were trying to quit smoking moved to vaping, and there was a messaging there that it might be healthier or something, but are they any safer? Are they considered any safer? Are there smokeless products that can be used to help you quit?
We generally do not recommend these products, such as tobacco or nicotine pouches or vaping or e-cigarettes, as safer options or options to help someone quit or alternatives, because they have their own risks associated with them. So many people think that because e-cigarettes don't have smoke associated with it, that it's safer, but you're still inhaling chemicals into the lung that are not supposed to be there and can cause scarring. There's a syndrome called EVALI, which is e-cigarette and vaping associated lung injury, and this actually has a risk of death associated with it. So I would not recommend these options.
Okay, so what would we recommend for folks who are looking to quit?
So what I usually recommend is a safe form of nicotine replacement, such as gum or lozenges or patches, as these do help to decrease the cravings, and research has shown that they help a person to quit smoking and to stay stopped. I also recommend that they make a quit date and they tell their point person about their quit date, and then that they go ahead and look on mainquitlink.com ahead of time for the resources that are available. Finally, I think one of the biggest things is to be kind to oneself, because I think there is some shame associated with smoking. There can be, people can get discouraged if they try to stop once and they don't succeed. But, it's better to look at that as a success, that they actually tried to quit, because it takes a lot of strength. And then they can look back at it and see what worked, what didn't work, and what might need to be changed or added to their plan for the next quit.
Dr. Patel, thank you so much for joining us. A really timely message. A lot of people use this as their #1 New Year's resolution. So it's great to know that there's help and advice out there. We appreciate you joining us.